What happens when a beloved pop icon sits down for what should be a routine morning interview, only to find herself facing questions that cross every professional line? The tension in the studio was palpable from the very first exchange, and what unfolded over the next several minutes became one of the most shocking moments in morning television history. Before we dive into exactly what was said that made Kylie Minogue stand up and walk off set during a live broadcast, make sure you subscribe to the channel and drop a comment below telling us what you think about celebrities walking out of interviews. Do they have the right to leave, or should they always see it through? Now, let's get into what actually happened. The interview started innocently enough. Kylie walked onto the set with her usual grace, greeting the host with a warm smile and settling into the guest chair. The host, known for pushing boundaries and asking provocative questions, began with what seemed like standard promotional questions about her latest album and upcoming tour. Kylie answered with the polish and professionalism that comes from decades in the entertainment industry, discussing her creative process and what fans could expect from the new music. But then the tone shifted. The host leaned forward, a slight smirk appearing on their face, and said, "Kylie, you've been in the industry for what, nearly 40 years now? That's quite a long time. Do you ever feel like maybe it's time to step aside and let the younger artists have their moment?" There was a brief pause. Kylie's smile remained, but something flickered in her eyes. "I'm sorry, what are you suggesting exactly?" she asked, her voice measured but with an edge that hadn't been there moments before. "Well, I'm just saying," the host continued, seemingly oblivious to or deliberately ignoring the shift in atmosphere. "The music industry is dominated by youth culture. Artists in their 20s, even teenagers, are the ones really connecting with audiences now. Don't you think there's something a bit, I don't know, desperate about trying to compete with them at this stage?" The studio audience fell silent. Even the crew members, usually bustling around during live broadcasts, seemed to freeze. Kylie sat back in her chair, taking a moment before responding. "Desperate is an interesting word choice," she said slowly. "I've been making music that people love for 4 decades. My latest album debuted at #1 in 12 countries. My tour sold out in minutes. So I'm curious, what makes you think I'm competing with anyone rather than simply doing what I've always done, which is creating art that resonates with people?" The host laughed, but it was a dismissive sound that made the tension in the room even thicker. Sure. But let's be honest. Aren't most of those fans just people reliving their youth? People who grew up with you and can't quite let go of the past? I mean, when was the last time you had a genuine cultural moment that wasn't nostalgia-driven? Kylie's posture straightened. Her voice remained calm, but there was steel underneath it now. "I think you're confusing longevity with irrelevance. Just because I've been successful for a long time doesn't mean my current work is somehow less valid or less impactful. If anything, the fact that I can still connect with audiences across multiple generations should tell you something about the quality and universality of what I create." "But isn't that the problem?" the host pressed on, clearly enjoying the confrontation. "You're stuck in this loop of what worked in the past. The sequins, the dance pop, the whole aesthetic, it's all very turn of the century, isn't it? Very early 2000s. When are we going to see you evolve into something that feels current?" "Current, according to whom?" Kylie shot back, her Australian accent becoming more pronounced as her frustration grew. "According to you? According to whatever trend cycle is happening this particular week. I've been through every trend imaginable in my career, and I'm still here because I stay true to what I do well, not because I chase after whatever 17-year-old is trending on social media." The host held up their hands in mock surrender. "Hey, I'm just asking the questions that people are thinking. You know, there's this perception that you're kind of has been trying to stay relevant. I'm giving you a chance to address that." Has been," Kylie repeated, her voice quiet but dangerous. "Is that what you think? Or is that what you're trying to make your audience think?" I'm just facilitating a conversation, the host said with a shrug. Look, you've had an incredible career. No one's denying that. But there comes a time when everyone needs to recognize that their peak is behind them. Wouldn't it be more dignified to maybe scale back, do the occasional nostalgia tour, instead of trying to position yourself alongside artists who are in their prime? The audience began to murmur, some in support of Kylie, others seemingly engaged by the drama unfolding before them. Kylie took a deep breath, clearly working to maintain her composure. I find it fascinating, she said, that you seem to have this idea that women in the entertainment industry have an expiration date, that once we reach a certain age, we should just gracefully bow out and make room. Would you ask the same questions of a male artist who's been in the industry as long as I have? Would you tell him he's desperate? Would you suggest he's past his prime? The host opened their mouth to respond, but Kylie continued, her voice gaining strength. Because I've watched male artists in their 50s, 60s, even 70s be celebrated for their longevity, called legends, icons, timeless. But when a woman dares to continue working, continue creating, continue being successful past the age of 40, suddenly it's desperate, it's sad, it's trying too hard. The double standard is staggering, and frankly, I'm tired of it. Oh, so now this is about sexism, the host said, rolling their eyes. That's convenient. Can't just be that your music isn't connecting anymore. It has to be some grand conspiracy against women? My music is connecting, Kylie said firmly. The numbers don't lie. The sold-out shows don't lie. What isn't connecting is your premise for this interview. You invited me here under the pretense of discussing my new work, and instead you're using this platform to tear me down with thinly veiled ageism and sexism. The host leaned back, clearly relishing the confrontation. I'm a journalist, Kylie. It's my job to ask tough questions. If you can't handle a bit of scrutiny, maybe that says something about how secure you really are in your current position. Tough questions, Kylie said, and there was a bitter laugh in her voice. Is that what you call this? Because from where I'm sitting, this feels less like journalism and more like a personal attack designed to create a viral moment for your show. Well, you're certainly giving us that, the host said with a grin that was clearly meant to provoke. Kylie stared at them for a long moment, and you could see the calculation happening behind her eyes, the decision being made in real time. You know what? Kylie said, her voice taking on a different quality, one that suggested she'd made a decision. Let's talk about viral moments. Let's talk about what this really is. Because you're sitting there with this smug expression, thinking you've cornered me, thinking you've created some great television by being deliberately insulting. But what you've actually done is reveal something quite ugly about how this industry treats women who dare to have long careers. The host's smile faltered slightly, but they tried to maintain control. I think you're being a bit dramatic, don't you? I'm simply asking you to reflect on your place in the current music landscape. My place, Kylie repeated. And what place would that be, exactly? Because last time I checked, I was headlining festivals, selling out arenas, and creating music that critics and fans alike have praised. So where exactly should my place be, in your estimation? At home? Retired? Making way for the next generation, as if there isn't room for all of us? There's only so much space in the public consciousness, the host said, seemingly regaining their confidence. And right now, that space is occupied by younger, fresher voices. Artists who are saying something new, who represent the current moment. You represent the past, Kylie. That's not an insult, it's just a fact. A fact, Kylie said softly, and there was something dangerous in her tone now. Let me tell you what's actually a fact. The fact is that I've adapted and evolved more times than you've probably held jobs. I went from stock Aitken Waterman pop to indie credibility to dance floor domination to sophisticated pop artistry. I've reinvented myself, while staying true to my core identity more times than most artists even get the chance to. So don't sit there and tell me I represent the past when I'm actively shaping the present. The host shifted in their seat, clearly not expecting Kylie to fight back quite this hard. Okay, but surely you can admit that your biggest cultural impact was in the late 90s and early 2000s. That's when you were truly relevant, truly influential. Everything since has been, well, diminishing returns. Diminishing returns, Kylie said, shaking her head. My last 3 albums all went platinum. My last tour grossed over $100 million. I've collaborated with some of the biggest names in music right now, artists half my age, who specifically seek me out because they respect what I bring to the table. But sure, let's call that diminishing returns, if it makes you feel better about your narrative. Those artists collaborate with you for the nostalgia factor, the host countered. For the credibility of working with someone from your era. It's not because you're on the cutting edge of anything. Kylie laughed, but it wasn't a pleasant sound. You have no idea what you're talking about. You're sitting here making assumptions based on your own biases and prejudices about age and gender, and you're trying to pass it off as insightful commentary. It's lazy at best and malicious at worst. I'm trying to have an honest conversation, the host insisted. Something that clearly makes you uncomfortable. Maybe that discomfort is telling you something you need to hear. The only thing that makes me uncomfortable, Kylie said, her voice rising slightly, is being ambushed on live television by someone who clearly has an agenda. You didn't bring me here to discuss my music. You brought me here to try and humiliate me, to try and push this narrative that I'm some washed up, has been desperately clinging to fame. And I'm sitting here wondering why. What did I ever do to you to deserve this level of disrespect? The host's expression hardened. This isn't personal, Kylie. This is about having real conversations instead of the usual puff piece interviews where everyone pretends everything is wonderful. Real conversations, Kylie said. Is that what you call asking someone if they're desperate? Suggesting they should retire? Telling them they're irrelevant? Because that's not a real conversation. That's a hit job. And the sad thing is, you think you're being brave and edgy when really you're just being cruel. I think you're confusing honesty with cruelty, the host said. Someone needs to say these things. Someone needs to point out when an artist is past their sell-by date. The audience gasped audibly at that phrase. Even some of the crew members looked shocked. Kylie sat completely still for a moment, staring at the host with an expression that was difficult to read. Past my sell-by date, she said quietly. You just compared me to expired food on live television. Do you have any idea how offensive that is? The host shrugged. It's a common expression. Don't be so sensitive. Sensitive, Kylie repeated. And now her anger was clearly visible. You know what? I've tried to engage with you in good faith. I've tried to address your points with dignity and professionalism, but you keep pushing, keep prodding, keep trying to get some kind of reaction out of me. Well, congratulations, you're about to get one. Finally, the host said, leaning forward with apparent excitement. Let's have a real moment here. Tell us how you really feel, Kylie. Tell us about the frustration of watching your career fade, of seeing younger artists eclipse you, of knowing that your best days are behind you. My best days are not behind me, Kylie said, her voice sharp and clear. That's what you don't understand. That's what people like you never understand. Success isn't just about being 25 and having your first hit. Success is about longevity, about growth, about continuing to create meaningful work regardless of age. My best days are happening right now, in this phase of my career where I have the experience, the wisdom, the creative freedom to make exactly the music I want to make. But nobody cares about that music, the host said bluntly. Not really. They care about the hits from 20 years ago. They want nostalgia, Kylie, not whatever you think you're offering now. Nobody cares, Kylie said, standing up suddenly from her chair. The movement was so abrupt that it clearly caught everyone off guard. Nobody cares. That's an interesting statement from someone whose show is hemorrhaging viewers year after year. At least according to the ratings I saw before I agreed to come on here. Tell me, how does it feel to be on a sinking ship while you're sitting there accusing me of being irrelevant? The host's face flushed. That's completely uncalled for. Is it? Kylie asked, her voice calm now, but with an intensity that commanded attention. Because you've spent the last 15 minutes taking shots at me, my career, my age, my relevance. But when I point out a basic fact about your show's performance, suddenly that's uncalled for? The hypocrisy is astounding. We're having an interview, the host said, their voice rising. I'm asking you questions. That's my job. No, Kylie said firmly. Your job is to inform and entertain your audience. What you're doing is trying to boost your ratings by creating a spectacle at my expense. You're using me as a prop in your desperate attempt to make your show seem relevant and edgy, and I'm not going to sit here and participate in it anymore. You're under contract, the host said quickly. You agreed to a 30-minute segment. Kylie laughed, a genuine sound of disbelief. You think I care about a contract right now? You think, after everything you've said, after the way you've treated me, I'm going to sit here for another 15 minutes so you can continue your little performance? I have far too much self-respect for that. So you're just going to run away? The host challenged. That's very professional. I'm not running away, Kylie said, her voice steady and strong. I'm making a choice. I'm choosing not to allow myself to be disrespected. I'm choosing not to validate this kind of interview style that treats guests like punching bags. And I'm choosing to show anyone watching this, especially young women, that you don't have to sit and take abuse just because someone has a microphone and a platform. The host stood up now, too, clearly trying to regain control of the situation. Kylie, I think you're overreacting. If you can't handle tough questions, maybe you're not as secure in your career as you claim to be. There's that word again, Kylie said, picking up her phone from the side table. Secure. You keep using it like it's some kind of gotcha. But the only person whose security seems questionable here is you. Otherwise, why would you need to tear down a guest to feel powerful? Why would you need to create conflict where there doesn't need to be any? I'm creating a conversation, the host said, but their voice had lost some of its earlier confidence. That's what good television is. Conflict, debate, real emotion. No, Kylie said, and she was moving now, stepping away from the guest chair. Good television is honest, intelligent discourse. It's asking challenging questions while still maintaining respect for your guest. It's creating space for genuine dialogue, not manufactured drama. What you're doing is tabloid journalism dressed up as morning show content, and I want no part of it. The host moved to block her path slightly, not physically but positionally, trying to keep her in the frame. So you're really going to walk out on a live interview? Do you understand how that's going to look? Kylie stopped and turned to face them directly. How it's going to look? Let me tell you exactly how it's going to look. It's going to look like a woman who knows her worth refusing to be diminished. It's going to look like someone with enough self-respect to remove herself from a toxic situation. And it's going to look like a host who pushed too far and lost their guest because they couldn't tell the difference between provocative and offensive. You're being incredibly unprofessional, the host said, and there was anger in their voice now, the mask slipping completely. We brought you here, we gave you a platform, and this is how you repay that? You gave me a platform, Kylie repeated incredulously. I have my own platform, thank you very much. I have millions of fans worldwide. I have decades of success. I have respect from my peers and critics. I don't need your show. You invited me here because you needed me more than I needed you. And instead of treating that opportunity with any kind of grace or professionalism, you decided to use it as a chance to be degrading and insulting. The production staff were clearly in chaos now. Producers speaking urgently into headsets, cameras unsure where to point, the audience completely silent and riveted by what was unfolding before them. "If you walk off this set," the host said, their voice taking on a threatening tone, "you'll never be invited back. And I'll make sure every other show knows about this little tantrum." Kylie actually smiled at that, and it was a smile that contained years of industry experience, of dealing with difficult people, of knowing exactly how the game was played. "Are you actually threatening me right now? On live television? Do you think that's going to work? Do you think I'm afraid of being blacklisted by morning shows? Let me tell you something. I've survived and thrived through changing record labels, shifting music trends, personal health crises, and industry politics that would have destroyed lesser artists. You think the threat of not being invited back to your struggling show is going to make me stay? I'm just saying there will be consequences," the host said, but their voice was less certain now. "Consequences," Kylie said. "Yes, there will be, but not for me. Because here's what's going to happen. This clip is going to go viral within the hour. People are going to watch it and they're going to see exactly what happened here. They're going to see a host who invited a guest on, supposedly to discuss her work, and then spent the entire time attacking her age, her relevance, and her right to continue having a career. And they're going to see that guest handle it with more grace and intelligence than the situation deserved, before finally deciding she'd had enough." "You're making a huge mistake," the host said. "No," Kylie replied calmly. "The mistake was agreeing to come on this show in the first place, but I'm correcting that mistake right now. I'm taking back my time, my energy, and my dignity, all things you tried to take from me." A producer approached from off-camera, trying to intervene. "Kylie, please, if we could just take a commercial break and talk about this." Kylie turned to the producer, her expression softening slightly, because this wasn't their fault. "I appreciate that you're trying to do your job, but there's nothing to talk about. I was brought here under false pretenses. This wasn't meant to be an interview. It was meant to be an ambush, and I don't do ambushes." The host made one last attempt. "Kylie, come on, let's reset. We can start over, talk about the music properly. I may have pushed a bit too hard, but that's just my interview style. It's nothing personal." "But that's the problem," Kylie said, turning back to face them one final time. "It became personal the moment you made it about my age, about whether I deserve to still be here, about whether my best days are behind me. You made it personal when you compared me to expired food. You made it personal when you suggested I was desperate and delusional for continuing to do what I love. So don't stand there now and tell me it's nothing personal. Own what you did." The host's jaw tightened. "Fine. You want me to own it? I think you're a relic of a bygone era, trying to stay relevant in a world that's moved on without you. I think your constant need to prove yourself shows exactly how insecure you are about your place in the industry. And I think walking off this show just proves that you can't handle the truth." The silence that followed was deafening. Even the host seemed to realize they'd gone too far, their face paling slightly as the words hung in the air. Kylie stared at them for a long moment, and when she spoke, her voice was quiet, but carried clearly through the stunned studio. "Thank you," she said. "Thank you for finally being honest about what this really was. Thank you for showing your true colors so clearly that no one can possibly misunderstand what happened here. And thank you for reminding me why it's so important to stand up for yourself, even when, especially when, it's difficult." She turned to the camera, addressing the audience directly now, both in the studio and at home. "To anyone watching this, let me tell you something. Don't ever let anyone tell you that you're too old, too past it, too anything to do what you love. Don't let anyone convince you that success has an expiration date or that longevity is something to be ashamed of. And most importantly, don't ever let anyone treat you this way and think you have to just sit there and take it. You have the right to walk away from situations that demean you. You have the right to demand respect. And you have the right to define your own success on your own terms. She looked back at the host one more time. "I hope you got the viral moment you wanted. I hope it was worth it." And with that, Kylie Minogue walked off the set. Not running, not fleeing, but walking with her head held high, her shoulders back, every inch the professional she'd been for nearly 4 decades. The cameras followed her as she moved past the stunned crew members, past the shocked audience, heading for the exit. The host stood there, seemingly frozen, unsure what to do or say. A producer rushed over to them, speaking urgently, but the damage was done. The interview was over, and what had been meant as a sensational moment for the show had turned into something else entirely. It had become a moment about dignity, about self-respect, about knowing when to walk away. As Kylie disappeared from view, the host finally turned back to the camera. "Well, there you have it, folks. That was Kylie Minogue, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be right back after this commercial break." But even as they tried to maintain composure, even as they tried to play it off as just another controversial interview moment, everyone watching knew they'd witnessed something significant. They'd seen an artist refuse to be diminished, refuse to accept a narrative that didn't serve her, refuse to participate in her own degradation for the sake of entertainment. The incident sparked immediate reaction across social media, with viewers passionately debating what they'd just seen. Some praised Kylie for standing her ground, for showing that dignity and self-respect matter more than completing a contracted interview segment. Others argued she should have stayed and continued to defend herself. But almost everyone agreed on one thing: the host had crossed a line, and that line crossing had consequences. What made the moment so powerful wasn't just the walk-off itself, but everything that led up to it. The way Kylie had tried to engage reasonably, the way she'd pointed out the double standards and ageism inherent in the questions, the way she'd given the host multiple chances to course correct before finally deciding enough was enough. It wasn't a diva moment or a tantrum. It was a measured, thoughtful decision by someone who knew exactly what they were doing and why. The conversation that followed in the days and weeks after would touch on larger issues about how the entertainment industry treats aging women, about the difference between tough journalism and needless cruelty, about the pressure on female performers to accept disrespect as just part of the job. But in that moment, on that studio floor, it was simply about one person saying no. No to being treated poorly. No to participating in her own diminishment. No to the idea that professional obligation means accepting abuse. Kylie Minogue walked off that set, and in doing so, she walked into a larger conversation about respect, dignity, and the right to determine your own narrative. The host may have wanted a viral moment, but what they got was a masterclass in standing up for yourself with grace under pressure. So what do you think? Did Kylie do the right thing by walking off? Or should she have stayed and continued the interview? Subscribe to the channel and drop your thoughts in the comments below. We want to hear what you think about this whole situation.